Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
One of the things I was hoping to chat with you about is your passion for music and how that developed for you. Did you have a lot of music in your home growing up?
Yeah, my brother Joe played the guitar. He was the first guy in Lancaster to have a Telecaster, a Fender, and which was a very big deal back in the 50s or early 60s. My cousin Michael was in the trad jazz scene. He was in the Temperance Seven, which is like a very famous band. He's a good banjo player, really excellent ukulele player, and he was a painter. And my mum played the piano. My dad collected classical music. So, and I think also being working class, music is the first kind of go-to luxury, you know. There's only a few things in the world that are free, you know, there's sex and there's music. And when you have no money, you tend to fall back on those for recreation. And I think that's just part of coming up in the northwest of England. And it was just the only outlet we had. We didn't have a lot of luxury at all.
Is that right? Yeah. So what was the first instrument that you played?
Well, when I was about 4, they got me a ukulele. And it was plastic. And I remember getting it for Christmas, and there was a pop star in England called Tommy Steele. And it was a Tommy Steele ukulele. And there's a picture of Tommy playing the guitar on the front. And like 2 weeks after Christmas, the paper fell off the front. And I realized it looked like Mickey Mouse. It was a Mickey Mouse ukulele that had stuck Tommy's likeness on the front. So I immediately got my first taste of the music business, really, you know. It's true.
So were there music stores in your neighborhood growing
No,
up?
well, you know, the music stores that there were like appliance stores. They sold washing machines, and they did a nice sideline in selling records. I used to run out of school at the age of 4 to catch the bus back home, 4 or 5. I was just a kid, you know. But Kenneth Gardner's record store was on the corner that I waited for the bus. And I used to run out of school early so that I could look at Marty Robbins, you know, this Marty Robbins album, Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs. And it was Dayglow Pink, and there was a cowboy going for his gun. And I used to stare up at this thing. And I knew the songs because they were on TV, but we didn't have a radio. But Marty Robbins, you know, it was the first suggestion of America. And that hot pink background, I never saw that color again until the Sex Pistols came out. There was a definite connection somewhere in your mind to hot pink. But America, you know, it was all about America. And it sort of transitioned from cowboys and Indians into rock and roll. So it was a very smooth thing. But that was the first time I really felt moved by American music.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I remember that album.
Yeah, it's great.
Striking.
Yeah.
Very cool. So tell me, what were your aspirations when you were a kid?
Well, I was going to be a painter. I could always paint. But at that point, when you were a kid, you know, I lived in a row of cottages that faced into the countryside. We were the last house in Lancaster. And Lancaster's a very beautiful, ancient city. It has a castle, huge monumental buildings in the middle of parks, gazebos, you know, follies. And there's a river running through it, an art school built specifically for the arts that I went to. Cobble streets, town hall, you know. I mean, my life just revolved around being a kid. I didn't really look outside of being a kid till I grew up. I had a fairly idyllic childhood, you know. I was playing in cornfields and climbing trees. And occasionally you'd hear Tommy Steele. You know, you'd hear these people that were like rock and roll, but a very British version of rock and roll. And you'd get the odd strain of country, like Brenda Lee. I remember thinking Brenda Lee was really cool when I was 6. But, you know, it's just natural stuff. You picked it up where you found it, you know. And I didn't really have any aspirations to do anything. I mean, it never occurred to me to have a career. You know, a career is something that just follows you. Life comes first. And then if there's a career, that's going to be attached to your life. But I certainly wouldn't go after a career at the expense of my life. Yeah.
Well, so tell me a little bit about how your career did get started.
Oh man, I mean, I was like playing in local bands. The first gig I did, I think, was at an art school dance where I was going to art school. And, after a couple of years, I left art school and decided to play locally as much as I could. And then I kind of got roped into this thing with the police where they actually came to a sound check one day and accused me of a jewel robbery. They said that I fit the description of a guy that had done a smash and grab job and stole all these diamonds. I don't know if they were just trying to make me nervous or what, but I knew it was time to leave town. And I got offered the job as a bass player with this band, three-piece band, jazz band called England. So I left. I left Lancaster and went to London. But, it was good to be shoved. I mean, there was a reason to leave. I felt like things were really getting bad. But, I would never do anything like that. Your Honor? Governor? I wouldn't, but it was a good shove. I was glad to get out and go to London.
And what was that experience like?
It was, living in West Hampstead in a room with two other guys, we were using the PA as furniture. One of us would sleep on the floor every third night, There was very little money. We were living almost day to day. But we had it, we had a great band, and we would play opening slots at the Marquee Club on Water Street, which was the place to play. The Stones had played there. The Who were raised there, really. It was just like the place. And so you felt like you were in something bigger than yourself, which was marvelous at that age, And it didn't work out. I stayed for 2 years, and we were playing up and down Britain and playing festivals and stuff. We always felt like we were about to happen, but it just never went the next yard, And I quit, and I went back to Lancaster. And as I went back to Lancaster, thinking that my world had come to an end, this letter came from America asking me to come to Cleveland to join a band that might be getting a record deal. So I kind of pulled together enough money to go. They got me a ticket and sent it, but I needed some money to go with. And I went to play in Cleveland for like 4 or 5 months, and that blew up. Then I came back to London and started the Babies, and that was the long way around. Wow. It was like, you couldn't try any harder than I was trying, but but I guess if you just keep at it, you'll break through eventually,
That's really cool. So what was the genesis of the Babies?
Well, there was a guitar player looking for anybody that wanted to play with him, Mike Corby, and I met him in a pub on Haverstock Hill about 7 o'clock one night, and he had this guy with him that thought he could manage a band, and I knew this guy that had come with me from a guitar store, and we were just talking about it, really, and there was no plan, there was no money, it was just all like signing onto a dream of some sort. I went back to my girlfriend that night and said, I don't know, maybe, and just got on with my life, and the manager came around a couple of weeks later and said, do you want to get together and maybe rehearse some of your songs? And I'd started writing songs when I got back to London. I thought I might need them somewhere. I was always writing things down. And we met up. We had the drummer from Motorhead come down, and he sat in with us, and me and the guitar player tried a couple of my songs and a couple of his licks, and it was all just like, what if, maybe. And then Tony Brock came down, the drummer. It was like the happening drummer on the London scene, and he played with us. And it seemed like we had something going on because Tony glued it together. He was very experienced. Me and him had really been around the block. And it just went on like that for like 2 years. People would leave. At one point, it was just me writing songs in this basement. And after 2 years, we got the right kind of people in it that seemed to be a band, and we took it from there,
It's It's crazy how that works.
Well, it was insane, you know. I mean, looking back on it, it's very Dickensian. You know, we had this basement in a warehouse down on the Thames that was by London Bridge, you know, Tower Bridge, and I mean, this doomy sort of like huge road running down the side of the Thames, and you go through these double doors and through this sort of warehouse into this cellar, and that's where that was our clubhouse, you know. And then we'd play for a couple of hours and go to the pub on the corner, have a pint of beer or something, and I'd catch the subway home. Or, you know, the manager might give me a ride home or something. But it was just like, you know, there was nothing else going on. I mean, it's very hard to talk about these days because, you know, the music business has changed so much. But it was 1,000,000 to 1 getting signed. You know, it was just the chances of getting out of London and being a success on any level was just stacked against you. In fact, when we finally got the name together, like the Babies, we were called the Babies because he couldn't stand talking to us, the manager. He said, "You're nothing but a bunch of babies," and walked out. And then he walked back in and said, "That's it," you know. And we all just fell about laughing, you know. But we couldn't get signed being called the Babies because they immediately thought we were like, you know, a flash in the pan. And so it's my idea. I said, let's film it. You know, let's just film it. And you can take the videotape around the record companies and we'll try that. And it worked. We hired a TV producer that had called Mike Mansfield, that had his own pop TV show for Saturday mornings. And he came down and filmed us lip syncing to the demos. And then our manager took that around the record companies and we got signed within like 2 months. We were the first band on the planet to ever do that. It was like 1975, 76. It was very early. In fact, video didn't even really exist at that point, apart from like in TV studios, you know. But you make things happen. You know, if there's nothing's happening, you make them happen.
That's really crazy.
Yeah.
So would you say you had like a big break? Or was it just a matter of slowly just kind of...
Well, up to the point of getting signed, it was just like running uphill. There was never any money. I mean, I don't know how... Me and my girlfriend were living over a sweet shop in Belsize Park, which was again like Dickensian. It was like real old London. We had this tiny room at the top of this building. And she had a job, and I would like try and make this thing work. Spent a lot of time walking around, you know, Primrose Hill and Hampstead Heath. There was nothing. And then, you know, when we got signed, it all went into gear so fast, you could almost feel your feet leaving the ground, you know. It was within 2 months of making the video. And 2 months after that, we were kind of like in Toronto working on our first album, you know. Just insane. Once it happens so fast. It doesn't happen slowly in a polite way. It just comes at you. And it was incredible, really. It was a great time.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Yeah, I know you're busy today and we don't have a whole lot of time. So one of the things that I would love to chat with you about is just some of the recordings that are most important to you.
Sure.
Any jump out at you that sort of quintessential recordings for you in your career, would you say?
Well, they were all important. I take it all very seriously. There's nothing that really, I've never thrown anything away willingly, you know. I think, I used to live in Nashville and I did a duet with Alison Krauss on Missing You. And I remember recording that and thinking it was about as good as I was ever going to get. I'd re-recorded the track so it was more modern, and Alison stepped in. And what was pretty much quintessentially a very lonely song of denial became this love song between two people in denial, which I thought was kind of really, I didn't expect that, you know? I really didn't. And, you know, you'd have to name a song and I'd have to say how I would react. But I think the No Breaks album was an interesting record. It was the first record that I produced by myself and got credit for. I always had a lot of say in the recordings of what I've done, but I actually took the reins in that one. But I was writing songs the day before we recorded them, and they were turning out like on fire. I couldn't stop it. And we were writing songs. I would get up in the morning, drink coffee, write a lyric, go in the studio and sing it. And I still do that kind of thing. That kind of work, when you're under that kind of pressure, is the best work. If you have 6 months to write something, you won't write anything. If you have 6 hours, you'll come up with something that's got 2 fists, you know? It's like needs must, you know? It's like when you edit something. If you edit it in a really brutal way, it's going to be like Zen poetry. If you just like being intellectual and trying to be showy, it's going to just be crap, really. But I mean, the simplest way of saying something is usually the most artistic, you know, it's the most honest, you know.
So is there a story behind Missing You as far as your writing the lyrics?
Well, I made it up on the spot. Somebody else had a tape, and I'd been working on this other song with them, and we were trying to find the tape on the tape machine and running the tape back and forth over the heads. And he hit the playback at the wrong moment, and this other track came up he was working on. And it sounded like something I would write, you know, it's 8 notes. And he put it up on the speakers, I put the headphones on, in his spare room, you know. And I sang the whole first verse and the whole first chorus off the top of my head. It was like falling backwards down a hill, you know. It was like there was no chance of me not being on the beam. It just, every time I think of you, I always catch my breath, and I'm still standing here and you're miles away, and I'm wondering why you left. And there's a storm that's raging through my frozen heart tonight. I ain't missing you at all. Since you've been gone away, I ain't missing you. All in one piece. And if you said, like, I'm going to write something in a genius kind of frame of mind, watch me go, you just look like an idiot. But sometimes that push into the ether, you know, that's where it lives. It's just completely its own thing. And sometimes you're lucky enough to go there. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And my whole life changed.
Well, thank you. You know,
Oh, no, that's great.
Wish we had all year, but this is fantastic. Again, what an honor it is.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Absolutely my pleasure.